My name is Evan Ifekoya. I'm an artist and energy worker. And I've started kind of recently to add the term energy worker to my work because I think that, or kind of to add it to how I frame myself, because actually, everything is energy. What I do, I work with sound, video, performance. I work with people, I work with text. Yeah, many things. Yeah, I'm not limited to a medium. So for me to think about a practice that is full-bodied is to account for more than just the act of looking when it comes to making art. I'm thinking about the experience of feeling an artwork, of kind of being able to sense an artwork, to be able to touch an artwork, to be able to smell an artwork, to be able to taste an artwork. And in various ways, these are things that I've explored within my work. For me, making art is not just an experience of looking or even just listening. I kind of, I want what I do to have the possibility to transform people. So the relationship between black sound and space is something that I've been thinking about for some time. I mean, sound is always really featured in my work. In my early work, it was kind of working with music from popular culture. It was kind of appropriating sounds. It was me becoming a kind of thinking of myself as a pop star. What would it mean for me as a black, queer, non-binary person? What would it mean for me to take on the role of a pop star? And in 2009, 2010, you didn't have black queer pop stars. I mean, now you do. And so, something I'm also realizing, kind of looking back at my work, is actually the power of manifestation. To kind of imagine and to speculate on ways of being that don't exist in the present is to actually call them into being. That sort of early investigation into me kind of exploring these various roles for myself then also led me to do archival research into sort of the black queer women-led social centre in London and other parts of the UK. And I noticed how the social centre was the space where one's politics and one's social life came together. So that meeting point has become kind of a point of inquiry for me, the space where our politics and our pleasure come together. Simultaneously, as somebody who, goes to clubs and kind of has really witnessed kind of how these spaces, can really transform one's relationship to self and in turn one's politics has, really been kind of formative for how I think about my work. And so a lot of these spaces have really inspired how I kind of create exhibitions. I was commissioned in 2017 to do a solo show in London, and sort of in the build up to the research and developing the work, I realised that I wanted it to be a sound-led installation. And I was having interactions with my community and experiencing events in London, and something I noticed was that sound was often compromised. So spaces or events would take place in spaces where it was great in terms of people coming together, but often the sound systems were not great quality. They didn't really match up to the sound systems we can have or experience in bigger clubs. And so I was kind of interested in what would it mean for my community, our community, communities, as queer, black, people of colour, what would it mean if we had a really good quality sound system and one that we ourselves built? The system was part of the show, A Gasworks, Ritual Without Belief, where the without strikes through. And, right from the beginning, the intention was that after the show, the sound system would be a community community resource. The sound system is named Black Obsidian Sound System. And actually, yeah, when I named the system, I didn't realize the acronym was BOSS, but it's perfect. And yeah, I named it Black Obsidian because obsidian is a stone of protection and truth. So I really again wanted it to not only be this have a functional element as this thing that we could use for our events, for our club nights, for our organizing, but that would also have a kind of sacred quality. It would also be this kind of protective, kind of almost totemic object, for the community. So in terms of the archive, yeah, my work often starts with an archival investigation. In relation to Ritual Without Belief specifically, actually in April just before the show opened, so April 2018, I'd actually had the opportunity to go to Los Angeles and do some research in Octavia E. Butler's archive. And wow, yeah, that was a really transformative experience. Her archive is housed within a botanical garden. What really proved so powerful and inspirational for me was the affirmations that Octavia wrote to herself. She would write lists of things that she wanted to call into being. There's one where she sort of repeatedly writes, I will become a New York Times best-selling author. And unfortunately it didn't happen within her lifetime, but actually quite recently she did become, a best-selling author. And again, for me, it really speaks to the power of manifestation, the power of kind of affirming what you want to call into existence, and so spending that time there really kind of reaffirmed that for me. And that's why I ended up, with the photography series that accompanied the work, which was shot in a botanical garden. And again, I was reflecting on, what would it mean to kind of start from a place of abundance, which is like the question that I used to really frame the exhibition. And that question really emerged out of, the time spent, in the archive and with the kind of the lush and abundant nature that existed, that the space was surrounded by. Archives are a big part of my work in terms of the research, but I don't often directly point to specific archives. I think the act of remembering and recollection kind of happens for me in reflecting on the experience, on being with an archive. But something that is really important to me is naming. So there are certain figures that I often come back to, like Octavia E. Butler. Maud Salter is somebody whose kind of archival material I spent a lot of time with, and I often refer to them in how I title the work, or I might point to them in specific works that they've made. Like I have a work where I refer to Earthseed, which is a text that exists within one of Octavia Butler's books, the Parable series. So for me, the act of remembering happens in a really embodied way. It happens in that it often transforms how I live my life. And it also happens in a way that I really kind of embed the practices and the ways of living of specific artists.